Wow, it sends a notice out. This meeting is being recorded. Got it.
Lets people know, so you're not not getting side swiped with a recording that you didn't know you're getting.
Right. That's like the everyone's first. This
All right,
meeting.
everybody, welcome to Optimal Alignment Health Podcast. We are going to be talking with Nanda and Satnam today. That's us, Nanda and Satnam. And we have a really great topic that we are going to be discussing today: the therapeutic benefits, the physiological benefits, and the overall benefits of mindfulness and meditation, and how this is a huge component to improving your health, improving your well-being, and your nervous system towards homeostasis, towards health. I am Satnam. I am excited to be with you guys today. And this is Nanda. Hi, Nanda.
Hello, hello, hello. So exciting to be here, especially we were so motivated for this to be our first podcast that we do because we're just getting started with the online space, and we've been in the fields and attending medical schools for so long that the most profound thing that we have ever found is meditation, is this idea. And so meditation and mindfulness is a foreign concept, so it's a little bit of a nightmare for research, right? Because it is not tangible and it's not one thing. And how do you objectively measure a subjective experience, right? So then the idea, though, is that meditation is for the mind what posture is for the body. And that idea is so fundamental and is really exciting to even have the awareness of that breakthrough, you know, because it's a set point, right? And how do we get our set point back? And what is our actual set point? And they're just like in the body, it's a biomechanical system. So there's a homeostasis, yeah, right? There is
That's right.
position of optimal alignment where the joints move best, where they have centrated, where they have maximal articular surface area from one joint surface to the other. That's the best position for it. That's how we are designed and evolved to perform well. That's our natural set point, is health. So with that, so with the natural set point of health, for the body, the physiology, the chemistry, the neurochemistry, what's actually circulating through our bloodstreams, right? There is a natural homeostasis for that. And we have, oh man, it's so exciting because we have an emotional guidance system. The experience, right, of how we are in any one state, in any one moment, is what's going on in our neurochemistry and physiology. We can sense it, we can feel it. And it's only with the awareness of how do we improve that state for a greater percentage of the day. And that's what meditation does, is it helps us to achieve a more balanced, centered state for the duration of the day. And that has profound health benefits.
I think it's really important to discuss, why we don't have an ideal homeostasis state. And we do a lot of conversations around the social constructs, the paradigms that we live in. And we're really big at, not just looking at the individual, but looking at the whole, looking at the environments that we live in. Whereas, these sympathetic states that exist are not objective in the sense that they used to be, ancestrally, when they were being chased by like saber-toothed tigers or by like lions or like black plagues. What we're talking about in today's day and age are these subjective fears that ruminate in our thoughts and in our emotions constantly. So it's not like a lion's chasing you and then that lion disappears and we're back to a parasympathetic state and homeostasis. We're completely removed from homeostasis because we are perpetuating a subjective fear in our thoughts. And then we've paired that thought with these emotional responses. And so now we're trapped in a chronic sympathetic state, nor are we given true ability to get out of those sympathetic states. And when you're talking about a sympathetic state, or you're talking about fear, or you're talking about subjective fear, what you're actually talking about is a a physiological response in the body where blood flows away from your vital organs to your extremities. It's where blood flows away from the prefrontal cortex. So, decision making is decreased whenever you're increasing heart rate. So everything physiologically changes chronically. And so we're never actually removed from a sympathetic state. And so now we're coexisting, not just in sympathetic states, but we're also.
They go crazy because they lose that, like, people are like, oh yeah, whatever, I'm in stressed out. But what you just said about the prefrontal cortex losing blood supply, it's like that's the crown glory of evolution. Is the ability to think and to be creative. Like that's the real crown jewel, is to create and to be in that space. And you can't be in that space if your prefrontal cortex doesn't have blood supply. So it's both, it's so impactful in the daily life experience, because if you maintain that state for a long time, no wonder things are going crazy, no wonder you feel crazy, no wonder you're acting crazy. Prefrontal cortex, right? We don't have time to get back into that centered state where we're balanced, where we're aligning our physiology to a state of optimal alignment so we can function good.
Man, I tell you what, you and I both just got back from the forest and from the jungle. I think, we can both attest to understanding that there is a stark difference, coming from nature or us being in nature, and then coming back to these commercialized artificial environments where, the brain and mind is automatically going back and trying to discern its environment. And it's a huge difference I can note in how I'm experiencing stress, or how I'm emotionally experiencing my environment since I've been back. And, I always, I talk about this in terms, if you take a fish out of water and the fish is struggling out of water, the fish is not crazy. The fish is not in its adequate environment. And you take a human being that has a physiological interaction with nature, and you take it out of nature, and its brain is trying to discern, safety, and it's trying to discern, homeostasis. The individual isn't crazy, yet that's what we've coined as, mental health, or a lack of mental health, is when we are struggling to survive in an artificial environment without the actual tools needed. And so again, these fundamental understandings of how our physiology works, what environments we're supposed to be in, and how to actually survive in an artificial environment. This is why meditation and mindfulness is so important, because it's the form of us remembering that, oh, I am not just this thing that's supposed to exist in an artificial environment. I'm actually nature trying to coexist in a cement or commercial environment. And how do I do that adequately is the question.
Yeah. And that's the natural point, right? That's the what is optimal alignment of the body, and how do we define that, and how corrupt it has become with the indoctrination of all of the stuff that people feel like they need. And that's a job, that's a house, that's a relationship, that's cars, that's a nicer car than the neighbor, that's a new bigger TV, that's all these things that we get trapped into feeling like we need, which puts us in a state of lack. Optimal alignment gone, right? Our desire to achieve and to get things robs us of the now moment, now, right? And so we forget that it's not out there, and we have to consciously learn to teach ourselves how to bring it back to enjoy this moment. So it's learning how to let the good in right now, and learning that is your right as the captain of your body, where you're in control as the awareness, right? You are the animating, energetic awareness that is being hosted by a temple of biology.
Love that. I love that. That's brilliant.
Animating, energetic field of awareness is being hosted by temple of biology. And so we are the controllers of the temple of biology, though, yeah? So And you can think a happy thought or you can think a sad thought. They both have different chemicals. Yeah. And we know that they circulate through the blood system then. And so our awareness and attention to something has an effect, right? Has a direct effect on our being, on our physiology. And we can learn to control that and come back into balance again. So not to beat a dead horse too much, but it's just so important. Like
it's so important.
So powerful. And the research is backing it up where it's evidence-based now, and which is ridiculous. And here's a problem with research is because it's hard to study, very few people are actually or have studied it. Now meditation and mindfulness is becoming much more popular in research, which is so great because it has such profound benefits. Before, they weren't studying it, and
they weren't studying nutrition either.
They weren't studying nutrition. Where are we going with that? Oh my goodness.
I mean, it's you know, when you're looking at alternative medicine, it's not alternative. It is actually the question of how is the human structured? And again, like, you know, I don't even think we should be speaking in terms of meditation and nutrition as though it's some like, you know, some woo-woo concept. You're looking at an actual structural human being. We've dissected it. We've studied it for centuries now. And the structure dictates function. The structure tells you exactly what the cell needs. And it tells you exactly, you know, again, what we said earlier, that the body needs to be in a homeostasis of a parasympathetic state. It's not supposed to be in a sympathetic state. And the question is, what gets my body back into homeostasis? Meditation and mindfulness. And even though we said mindfulness and meditation is hard to study, Harvard studied it and they found an actual physical manifestation of meditation. And that study suggested and showed, after I believe it was an 8-week mindfulness meditation course run by John Kabat-Zinn, mindfulness-based stress reduction, they showed marked improvement in the gray matter in the brain. You know, specifically, you know, it was found in the areas responsible for attention in the temporal parietal junction and the cerebellum in the group that meditated. And so these changes in gray matter and concentration was the areas of concentration and focus. And so, you know, even though meditation is hard to study, that's a huge study, Nanda.
Well, that's massive. And, but I mean, so before, just to preface, like the placebo effect, right? That's where I was going with, like, we know the placebo effect works. It fixes 50% of everything. Like, doctors know it works so well that they prescribe antibiotics for viral infections because the placebo effect helps people improve when they take the antibiotic because they feel better, they're taking the drug. Even though it has no ability, it's an antibiotic and it's a viral, right? It makes no sense, but they do it all the time, every day. Pills, placebo pills, that's the standard from which medications and interventions have to pass. They have to perform better than placebo, right? Better than the thought that you're going to get better. That's the standard to get a drug approved. Wow, that's not very high. You mean they compared the standard of the efficacy of a medication to the power and effectiveness of your thoughts, of a belief? That's incredible, right? That is incredible. And the placebo effect is so well studied. We'll talk more, but it's the power of the mind. That's all it is. And now we're starting to see, like you said, in the gray matter growing, the brain is expanding, right? And it's making all these changes. And that study done, you know, by Harvard, groundbreaking. Other neuroscience and researchers have found other ridiculous, amazing things about what meditation does, including it grows the area of the insula. So the insula is related for compassion, for love, and for empathy. So when you meditate, you're able to connect with others at a deeper level. You connect with yourself, you have more compassion, you have more empathy, you become a kinder person. And they also found the amygdala shrink, right? So the amygdala is the area of the brain that's responsible for fear and anxiety and stress. So now you combine all of these things together. You combine I am going to grow the brain, the area of thinking, power, processing, focus. I am going to grow the area of the brain responsible for being loving and compassionate and empathetic towards others. And I'm going to shrink the area of my brain that stresses and fears and worries.
Sounds like a no-brainer to me.
Great combination.
Yeah.
And then you combine that with the fact that a parasympathetic state deeper than that to really drop into ultimate physiology is to tap into the set state, which is heart and brain coherence. That's oneness between your different brains of life. And what that means, if anyone's unfamiliar with heart math, is that your heart has a certain frequency that it vibrates at, and they can measure the difference, and they can measure the brainwave difference at
An
different
electromagnetic resonance, right?
right. And so when these fields are not coherent, so when they're not communicating, the brain is in a state of chaos, and you can see the actual brain waves in a state of incongruence, and they're not firing together. And when someone drops into a meditative state, when they are able to control their breath and breathe deeply, relaxing, dropping into that space, they find that the brain and the heart and brain, when they go into coherence, all of a sudden the brain waves all become coherent, and they start to flow together, and they start to integrate, and they start to work together. And you see the areas of the brain light up responsible for creativity, for love, for joy, for bliss. All of these areas of the brain just explode, and you get all the way up into gamma waves, right? And gamma can be a super excited stress state, or it can be just joy, bliss, ecstasy. And that's happening in meditation. And we know that. And so how do we get in that state? That's creativity. That's optimal alignment, right? That's maximizing what we're capable of.
Right. And so, it's going back to this idea of, that science is actually showing these physical representations of what meditation does. Again, to understand this from a term of, the way we normally think of, physical exercise. When I go to the gym, I keep increasing my biceps, my triceps, my chest muscles, and things like that, and reap the rewards and benefits of being stronger in that state. And again, I think, like, from a functional standpoint, when we're talking about, what are the tribulations of, what challenges us in living in the world that we live in. And again, everything that we're talking about is helping an individual become more adapted to living in an artificial world. If we had the magic wand, we would just take everybody and put them right back into the most natural state, feed them the most natural foods, to give them the most natural rest, to make sure that they're going to bed according to circadian rhythms, and then everybody would thrive that way. But that's not reality. The reality is that we exist in an artificial state. And so our objective with Optimal Alignment Health, with everything that we do, is hoping that we can give people tools to practice over and over again, so that way they know how and what they need in an artificial environment. Because unless you're planning to leave the artificial environment, you're going to have to know how to eat the right foods. You're going to have to know how to come back to homeostasis and sympathetic, out of sympathetic state into parasympathetic state. And so to reinforce, this idea of, the gray matter, again, it's the areas when you go to the gym, AKA when you are meditating. In his study, the 8-week study, I believe it was like a 28 minutes a day is what he was using in that study for 8 weeks. And you can break that up in 20 minutes twice a day, or you can, we usually do like
meditation style there. 20 minutes twice a day is the transcendental meditation. And John Kabat-Zinn does a lot of body scanning and awareness and
guided meditations. And so what you're seeing with that, so when you're going to the meditation gym, what you're seeing is these areas involved in learning and memory, which, again, what do we need in this current environment that we live in? We need to have the ability to learn, to be able to sustain, to be able to create, to be able to produce.
Meditation is not hocus pocus. Meditation is focus. That's the truth of it. And it's one you're actually never maintaining one thought, right? Because you can never step in the same river twice. It's always flowing, it's always moving, and that's the same with the now moment, where the now moment is always different. It's always a new now, right? Every second, all millions of cells are dying, millions of cells in your body are being born. It's ever changing, just like a river. And so meditation is truly about maintaining one thought and then holding that same thought and state again and again and again and again, over and over and over again, until you're able to achieve one pointedness. And that's the goal, is to be able to be one pointed in life, like you're saying, with focus and growing these areas of the brain. It pays off, right? In real life, it has.
And the other thing, so it's learning and memory, emotional regulation. And so what you're talking about here is, we are not taught emotional resilience or mental resilience in elementary school, middle school, or high school. So by the time we get to our 20s, 30s, and 40s, we're experiencing emotional states which are natural to these environments that we live in, to the relationships that we live in, and yet we don't even have any clue as to how to navigate any of these. So we're always responding and reacting, meaning an emotional state creates a fight or flight or sympathetic state in me, whether it's anger, whether it's grief, whether it's jealousy. I get a reactive state, and then I'm making choices without discernment. Again, prefrontal cortex shuts off. I'm in a sympathetic state. I'm feeling a sense of rage. And what I end up doing is something erratic, and I end up like retaliating at somebody. I end up, like even worst case scenarios you'll see out there is like people violently, responding because they have no emotional regulation. And so again, these are tools to use, especially if you find yourself emotionally dysregulated, to find yourself again in a state of calm. Because even if you have practiced enough, let's say you have anger issues and you practice mindfulness meditation in a response where you normally respond and retaliate, you have the ability to breathe and come into a parasympathetic state. And then with emotional regulation, you can respond differently than you ever have in your life. And so again, these are not just like, Buddhist tools. These are actual tools to help make your life easier and more functional if you've been living in a state of dysregulation or anxiety or stress. This is a proven method to help get you back to function in life and to be able to exist and to appreciate and enjoy life without the sympathetic nervous system yanking at you constantly.
Yeah. And so there is like, that's just so much of it, like your quality of life. And it's beyond that, I think, is the main point also that we want to get across, where it's a no-brainer for every day to be meditating, for every person, and to start really pushing it, even as a society, and for every hospital to be pushing it. So we have, it grows your critical thinking, the gray matter of your brain. It's shrinking your amygdala, which is less stress, less anxiety. It's growing the insula for more compassion and empathy. It's bringing you into a parasympathetic state, which is good for your physiology, which feels really nice, right? Which is good for your digestion. You got IBS or some other type of like other. Oh, and then how does all this affect the body? Is that it reduces inflammation. Is that it boosts the immune system. Is that it does all of these things that are, what else? Okay, so it's boosting the immune system, right? It reduces inflammation. Oh, and let's not forget that meditation is the fountain of youth. Literally makes people functionally younger. Oh, that's another thing. So not only does it grow your gray matter in your brain, but research has found that it prevents against age-related atrophy. So the brain doesn't actually degenerate the same in long-term meditators. They have also found that meditation increases the length of your telomeres. And they found that people who practice meditating have longer RLTs, relative RTLs, relative telomere length. They are functionally younger. Telomeres are like the plastic tips on your shoelaces.
Mm-hmm.
I get so excited, I run out of breath and can't talk. but they are actually make you younger. Yeah, so telomeres, and that's groundbreaking, right? These are both, the fact it grows your brain and lengthens your telomeres were not possible according to science. Science was certain that you could not grow your brain, you only atrophied, and that you only lost telomeres, that you couldn't actually lengthen your telomeres. And they've shown telomere length almost up to 10% growth in a short stint of meditation. That's amazing.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So again, the benefits are just monumental in terms of what you gain from it. I mean, also, did you already mention chronic pain? I mean, that's a huge one that we're looking at too. Yeah, and so when you're talking about, and so I think let's just clarify here, I think, for any individual who may not understand fully what we're talking about when we talk about meditation, because meditation can be seemingly arbitrary, but there are different forms of meditation. You can sit with breath, you can acceptance and commitment therapy, mindfulness based stress reduction, mindfulness based cognitive therapy. What we're talking about is awareness, is really what we're talking about, is growing your sense of awareness. And when we go deeper into some of our other podcasts, really where we're taking you on this road is the acknowledgement of the awareness that we are. Because really what ends up happening is we over identify with our body, especially again when you're looking at the constructs of how we were raised, with everything talking about beauty, talking about looks. What ends up happening is we over identify with the physical body. And so when we look in the mirror, we think the body is us, even though the body is transformed 1,000 times since birth. We're never actually the same. And we over identify.
Not one cell in the body is the same.
And so we think that we're the body, and then we over identify also with a tool of being human, of the human experience, which is the mind which is actually designed and intended to help us execute our desires, for us to be able to find what it is that we are trying to do. And the mind is supposed to find all of the things via the reticular activating system that we need in order to fulfill whatever it is, meaning the awareness that we are is looking out into the world, and it's experiencing and observing it through the senses, and then it's creating intention, and then it's moving towards it. But instead of us identifying, oh, I am the awareness, experiencing moment upon moment, I am the body. And then we start to, I am the body and I am the mind. And so our awareness is not out in the world. It's hyper-focused on what the mind is saying, and it's hyper-focused on what the body's feeling. And so we become, and actually I would say imprisoned even, into a box of a body mind, which is without opposition. It's the mind says, hey, I am this. And then all of a sudden I believe I am that, without even questioning what the mind and the body is saying. And so,
right. And I mean, I love what you said when you described the meditation, because meditation is not religious. Meditation doesn't care what religion you are. In fact, it is in every religion. And it goes all the way back to the breath, where the Buddha just had breathing, right? That was the mantra, just focus on the breath and come back into the breath. And that was the whole thing. No words needed, just breathing in and out. And bringing your full attention and awareness just to that breath for a while, and seeing how that goes with the wheel spinning upstairs. It goes all the way though to the meditations of the Buddha, to the meditations of, oh my goodness, there's so many good thoughts he went over. Oh, and be still and know that I am God, right? That's in the Bible. Just what a thought, right? That's in the Bible, just to be still and just meditate on, wow, I am God, right? That is profound. And that's an elevated thought. So you're creating that sense of awe, that sense of gratitude, that sense of thankfulness, joy, like that's created in your body. And that's the natural set state. It is, how about, it's like you're trying to get into, like you're trying to find this place, you're always seeking nirvana or peace, right? But you're already inside, and your mind is the guardian that prevents you from realizing that it's already there. The peace is already here right now. And that state changes the body in so many ways that it's just out of control. It does so many good things for the body that it's just a practice that has to be done. It has to be done.
I wish that, I wish I could overemphasize, how my life was over the past several decades, and to really be able to, share, the profound changes I've had, and recognizing in hindsight now how much I was attached to really strong false narratives and false stories that caused a lot of behavior patterns in me that were really unhealthy. And it's so interesting to come down this road of meditation and healthy eating, and the value of health and wellness, to be able to recognize like how deeply unaware I was of some of these fundamental truths of life. And I think what you're talking about is this quantum field, or this quantum explanation of what life really is. And I don't think until you are asking the questions, and you're really like forging the willingness to ask, who are we, what is it that we're doing on this planet, what is this life experience. I don't think you're really going to be open to it, because we are so consumed in movies and television and a commercial marketed way of how we ought to be, what we ought to look like. And so we end up pursuing all of these things in hopes of happiness, never actually understanding the full capacity of what it means to be human, to be a human being. And a human being is not living in any, imagination state. You are always living in a profound sense of here and now, which is always unfolding in the here and now. And so everything that's happened in the past is gone, potentially has forged your beliefs, it's forged your behavior patterns, but none of that has to be true. Everything can be profoundly transformed if it's not working for you. And what we're recognizing is a lot of what people have forged over their decades is not working for them. And usually what you're seeing at a very core belief of what a person believes to be true is a very false belief of who they are. They're identifying with a very limited perception of what it means to be a human being. And so they're limited in their thinking, they're scarce in how they respond, they don't think that there's enough. And so this is kind of how they go on living the rest of their life. We're here to invite you to open up your awareness, to recognize that you have infinite potential to create your life. And first and foremost, you want to bring your awareness into this knowing, into this homeostasis state. So first and foremost, you want to get your body healthy. You want to get your body out of a stress state. And then you want to get blood flowing to your prefrontal cortex. So now you can be an actual creator of your life. You can move your awareness and your attention, out of disease states, and you can move them into, creative states. And that's really what it means to be human being, is what am I here to create? And how can I live my most healthy life, so that way I can really design a life that is full of everything that I want and everything that I want to be. And so this is, again, what we're talking about, is how do you move out of disease fear states into being a state of creatorship?
Right, which is the natural place. And the fact is, every day, all around the world, people experience radical remissions, unexplainable healings. People have unexplainable experiences where they're able to leave their body as awareness and see things that happen that they shouldn't. And these are like neuroscientists who have been documented doing this, right? Really good, valid people who are having these experiences that are unexplainable. So we live in an area, in a world that's spooky a little bit, right?
A little bit.
Einstein didn't believe, Einstein, we live in a quantum world. This is so important, that we live in a quantum world. And so when you really want to know how things work to the best of your ability, you have to look at what the best science says. And since the early 1900s, we have known about quantum physics and that we live in a quantum world where weird stuff like are entangled. And they just did research that showed particles that were 1,200 kilometers apart, right? 1,200 or maybe 12,000, something like this, shot it up to space and back. And they still were entangled somehow. And so that's energy, right? We live in an energetic system. And that's all there is energy. That's what quantum physics knows. And so we have to operate from the perspective of the best science, which is quantum physics, which is integrating energy, because everything is energy. And in fact, light, that's the fundamental particles of everything. And when you really get down to it, it's really mind. It's like we live inside one big thinking organism that's constantly coming and passing, and then we hallucinate our reality. It's a holographic hallucination, right? What the heck is that? Right? It's crazy. And so but it's the truth of it. And so how do we optimize it, right? And stop getting stuck in the dogma of you're only physical and your DNA is going to predict your reality and you can't do anything about it. And so you need something outside of yourself to change, right? You know, whatever that is.
It's such a limited way to think when we're so limitless. And that's really, I think, you know, what we're starting to share with the world on a larger scale. I mean, you know, as practitioners, our fundamental is to get a person out of a fear state, out of disease state. And the foundation of that, you know, again, is structurally already written into how our body is designed. So that's almost too easy. The idea is, you know, once we can get you into homeostasis, then can you master the skills of awareness, of attention and focus to be able to really harness this energy, to be able to move these particles in your favor, to really be able to create and paint your life from limitlessness. And what that means is that you first have to be able to let go of the victim mentality. You know, the foundation is that life is not happening to you. Life is not happening to us. It's not this thing that's happening to us. It's happening for us. And in no circumstances of growth have I ever experienced on my own or with anybody I know or with patients or even in chiropractic medicine, does growth happen just accidentally. It happens from compression and pressure. And then from compression and pressure, a person grows. And so what you're looking at is the events that are happening in our lives are happening for us. And so if we can remain still enough, meaning like in a meditative awareness of knowing that, wow, this is happening for me, then I can move through this experience because it's transient. It's not going to last forever. And then you'll almost always come out expanded and more aware and more strong and more wise to take on exactly what it is that you needed to become to receive all the things that you desire. And so, you know, now
is that you have to boost your psychological immune system. You have to work on that mind, or you become a prisoner of the mind. And it is a practice. Just like yoga is a practice where you're breathing into difficult positions. It's not always easy to sit and meditate. And you get to take that skill, right? It's not easy to sit in a plank either while you're sweating and like your core hurts and you're trying to squeeze your glutes, but you're like, I'm dying, right? That happens. And it's good for you. It makes you stronger. And so you can do that and you build resilience, you build capacity. And then in life, when you're faced with those challenges, you're able to transcend them so much easier. Not just that, but you're creating a different reality in your physiology. You are actually changing the chemicals that are in your body. And the more you practice mastering the mind, because the mind is a really evolved don't get killed device. It's like you're saying, it's always looking for things that are dangerous. And that fear, that false fear when we're also safe, so very safe. That false fear that we create because we know through research at Stanford from Carl Pribram that the brain does not differentiate between imagination and reality. That's not a function that we were blessed to have when we had to really prepare for the saber-toothed tiger that you talked about earlier. Our body had to prepare and it had to respond to the thought about the tiger. So by the time the tiger came out of the bushes, we were already ready to run. That's how the body works. That's how you survive. That's how all animals survive, is the thought of danger prepares them for response. That's what stress hormones do. Stress hormones prepare the body to take action. That's it. So, which is good. It mobilizes energy, right? It mobilizes energy. So we can use that short term. Short term stress is highly beneficial. Long term stress, no creature on earth can handle long-term stress without going crazy. It's not the design, right? The idea of why zebras don't have ulcers, that book, right, talks about the mindfulness of an animal, where a zebra is going in the Sahara, lion chases it, zebra runs for its life, and then after the lion stops chasing it, the zebra comes, it like walks back up to the herd, shakes its whole body, and then goes back to grazing. Done. Over. No long-term chronic ailments forming for that zebra. Just bam, did it was. But anyway,
that's the conundrum of being human, though, is that we end up attachment to the past, attachment to situations, and our inability to let go keeps us in these states of survival, keeps us in these old narratives, and keeps us in these physiological disease states. And what you're talking about here is when you're looking at so much disease is coming from a conglomeration of poor diet, lack of exercise, not enough water, not enough hydration, not enough sunlight, and high stress states. Because again, the body's objective is to maintain homeostasis, ecosystems designed to maintain balance for as prolonged periods of time. And again, we can't emphasize this enough, is that you have to look at the systems and environments that we live in, and not assume that these environments are functional, nor are they healthy. And so just because everybody's doing something, just because that's the way it's been done for centuries or decades, doesn't mean it's the best way for you, or is it the best way for your family. You always want to go back to, who am I? How am I structured, and how am I designed? How am I supposed to eat? How am I supposed to sleep? How am I supposed to drink? How am I supposed to be in nature? And then you want to ask yourself the question, how far am I removed from my design? And then you can potentially answer some of your own disease questions. So before you go off looking for artificial techniques and methods of, bringing yourself back to homeostasis, just go back to your design. We look at, we use the example of Ferrari all the time. If you're taking your Ferrari up a mountainside and using diesel fuel into it, and then you take it to the mechanic and be like, I can't figure out what's wrong with my Ferrari, the mechanic is going to look at you crazy, because it's like, well, hey, this is not a 4x4, nor is it a E350 schoolie bus. This is a Ferrari. This doesn't take diesel fuel. So your body too is eloquent design. And we have just unfortunately been put into a dysfunctional artificial environment, and we're asked to be normal and function in it. And so, always going back to, there's nothing wrong with you. You are eloquent in design. And so the question is, how do you get yourself out of your stress states? Feed your body really good food from the trees, from nature, less from boxes, and then drink a lot more, water. Get outdoors more, be one with nature more, and then find stillness, because the mind, again, like Nanda said, the mind sits at the gates of nirvana. It's constantly telling you, be afraid of this. You're not good enough. You're not going to have enough money. You're going to die. You're going to become a failure. No one's going to love you. This is the mind. It's constantly telling you, until you do all these things, you can't come into nirvana, which is happiness and bliss. And this is the paradox. The paradox is, as soon as you just shut off the mind, you see clarity. And clarity is like, oh man, I'm already inside nirvana. I'm already have everything. I'm already loved. I'm already brilliant. I already have a cool body. I already have the mechanisms and creativity I need. So I don't need anything else. So meditation is how you shut off that guardian at the door. And then you get a small glimpse of nirvana. And as you practice over time, just like you go to the gym and you see, wow, I'm so strong, you start to see more and more your emotional resilience, your lack of fear, your confidence in your ability to take on life, your confidence in communication, your confidence in who you are. And this does not happen overnight. So we can't emphasize enough that this strategy starts today. The same way, if you have to go to the gym, you'll start today and you're going to see the effects at the end of a year. Well, not even. You'll see this in his study 8 weeks. And then at the end of a year, you're going to be really impressed. And then at the end of 3 years, you're going to be really impressed. 10 years from now, you're not going to remember the old you anymore.
Right. What kind of body do you want and what are you tolerating? What percentage of the day are you out of alignment, right?
Yeah.
That's to be asking yourself genuinely, honestly, what are you willing to tolerate? Years of anxiety and stress and of whatever, of anger, of guilt and shame and all of these negative
Oh.
they're neural patterns, right? We know that they're stored in cells in the brain like scar tissue a little bit, and those thoughts are there, and when we bring attention to them, they stay there and they grow and they'll fester, and they'll still come up, right? They're still going to trigger. We never are able to get rid of the ego mind that's keeping us alive, or you'd be dead. However, the length of time you spend upset, the length of time you spend out of alignment is going to get less and less and less. And when you are in alignment, we know that the body functions better. We know that your immune system works better. We know that you're more creative. We know that you are rewriting the genetic tissue in your body. And the reason why you're rewriting your genetic tissue is that your thoughts and your state of physiology are circulating through your bloodstream systemically to every cell in your body. They're sending chemical information down onto the receptors of the cells, and that information is raining down like manna from heaven. Right? That's what's happening. And all the cells are grabbing onto this manna or this information, and then they're taking that information, they're taking that manna, and they're turning it into protein. And the way they do that is they specifically go to the DNA and they do the DNA thing. The DNA is just a blueprint. But the environment and the signal, the information that's sent and rains down on the cell determines what part of the DNA the proteins make. We know this. We know this. Meditation is changing the DNA because it's changing the environment of the cell. Because you created a different reality with the power of your mind, which is how the placebo effect works. When the body believes it's in a state of sickness, the immune system is defeated already because the thought is there. And when you have thoughts, I'm getting better, I am being positive, it's not even about positivity, it is about the knowing, it's about the thought. That's how much energy it has. And a thought is real. When you have a thought, you can see it right on a scan. When you have a thought, it creates an electrical connection, an impulse in certain areas of the brain, in lots of areas of the brain. Those areas of the brain then go to a different area of the brain that releases chemicals in response to that specific thought, in response to that specific series of electrical impulses and chemical reactions that you created with your awareness. The thought creates the chemistry. The thought creates the electrical stimulus or input that creates the chemistry that circulates to the blood cells, or not even the blood cells, every cell in the body. And then those cells take that information and they create the building blocks that are your physical apparatus. It's time to get that construction crew on your side, right?
That's it, guys. That's a huge proponent of the foundation and the actual science of what is going on from a thought to a behavior, and then utilizing this form of this tool to help you navigate your thoughts and emotions way better. Again, we weren't trained in mental and emotional resilience, and so we hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. We are really excited to continue on this conversation in our next podcast. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at info@optimalalignmenthealth.com. And then we also have a few programs lined up: mindfulness, meditation programs, movement programs, nutrition programs at optimalalignmenthealth.com. We highly encourage you to check out our website, email us, find us on YouTube, Optimal Alignment Health. We're also on Facebook and Instagram as Optimal Alignment Health. Nanda and I are both wellness coaches that are highly interested in helping you get out of the pleasure trap, helping you learn these lifestyle strategies to make your life optimal. Any last words, Nanda?
Let's continue the process to master our biology. That's the name of this game. Master the biology to ascend to the higher levels of what's possible, and joy and happiness and gratitude and life satisfaction, to really love our lives. That's it. And this tool is really powerful.
All righty, guys. Y'all take care.